so angry? He said, sin, Cain, is crouching at your door, and its desire is to have you, but you must master it. And he had that conversation with Cain. He said, Cain, you need to watch yourself. You're about to make a very bad decision. And Cain, of course, did not listen to God, and he said, well, if God's not going to take my offering, I'm going to make sure he doesn't get pleased at all. And I'm going to kill the very person who was giving him the offer that he enjoys. And so he killed his brother, not because he hated his brother, but because he was envious. And he didn't, if God was not going to take his offering, he wasn't going to take anybody's offering. He was upset with God. And that's a very bad place to be. But basically what Cain said was, I'm only going to be happy if what I want to do is what God wants. And when that wasn't the case, he ended up murdering somebody and ruining his life. And I think a lot of us do that with God. We say, well, this is what I want you to be happy with, God, and you're not happy with it. And so you end up having sin crouching at your door and controlling you and mastering your life. Your life need not be a tragedy, okay? Some of you are living, you've had tragic lives, or you feel like you're a Shakespearean character at times, living a real tragedy. But it need not be that way. But I promise you, if you try to author your life from today on, it will be one. Because the only story you can author is a tragedy. You cannot author a story with a happy ending. Only God can do that. The clay cannot fight with the potter. And you should stop trying to do that. So that's the first point I want to make, is that life is a tragedy for those who are proud. If you're bent on doing your will and having your way win out, you're going to end up living a tragedy. It's that simple. The inverse of that is also true, though. Life is a comedy for those who are humble. It's a comedy for those who are humble. Let's look at the latter part of verse 18. Verse 18 again, it came about as their soul was departing, for she died, that she named her son Ben-Oni, which means the son of my sorrow. But his father called him Benjamin, which means the son of the right hand. I just want to recap Jacob's life for just a second. Jacob's life was quite a bit different than his wife's. His wife was kind of born with everything, and she was very blessed. But Jacob was born very discontented. You might remember Jacob came out of the womb holding on to his brother's ankle. He wanted to be first. And his name, Jacob, means deceiver, liar, supplanter. He was a schemer, a hustler. That's all he did. He was a liar. And you remember the first part of his life was him lying and scheming and hustling to get everything that he wanted, because he was very unhappy. And he ended up burning the bridges. He burned the bridge with his father, with his brother, with his uncle, with his friends. He burned the bridge with everybody to get his way. But you might remember that when everything started to crowd on him, the walls were coming in and the wheels were coming off, and his brother was coming after him after his mother had died. And remember, he was coming to take him. Remember, Jacob went across the Jabbok River and decided to wrestle with God. He wrestled with God all night. You remember that? And it says that he wrestled with the angel and he overcame the angel. And he got the angel to bless him. Well, what happened that night was that Jacob was humbled. And God changed his name from liar to he strives with God. He changed his name to Israel. He also gave him a limp. And the point that God was making, and the point the story makes, is that Jacob was a changed man after that. Jacob went across that river a very proud man who was going to do everything on his own power and his own strength. And he walked back across that river humbled and broken. And he made up his mind he wasn't going to do things his way anymore, but he was going to surrender to what God wanted. And in surrendering to that, he became humble and he began to trust in God. And Jacob here, this person now who's humbled, he saw, even though he was grieved as well, he loved Rachel, and if you read later in the book, you find he recounts the story and he tells just how hard it was to lose Rachel. He really did love her. But he realized that in this moment, that this name that Rachel gave this son was unjust. It was wrong to name him that. And so after his wife died, he said, I'm going to change the name of that child. He's not going to be called Ben-Oni. I'm going to name him Benjamin. And, it's hard not to note here that Jacob was moving from Bethel to Bethlehem. Okay? He was leaving, Bethel means the house of God, and Bethlehem means the house of bread. He was basically leaving the Garden of Eden for Calvary. It was the fall, from the fall to redemption. Remember, Bethlehem, of course, is where Jesus Christ was born. And there's a very real sense in which Ben-Oni, as a name, represents Adam, and Benjamin, as a name, represents Jesus Christ. And there was a very real sense in which he understood that what was going on here was that he was being led from a life without God to a life trusting in God for redemption. And this child was kind of a symbol of that. And I think also I want you to understand, too, from the life of Jacob here, it's very important to note that Jacob's life largely went well until he laid it down. If you read Jacob's life prior to this moment, everything went pretty much well for him. Even though he was lying and scheming, he got his way, didn't he? He became very wealthy. He got the wife that he wanted, and he swindled, and he became very wealthy, and he got everything he wanted. He got the birthright. He got the blessing of his father. But what's interesting to me is as soon as he lays down his life, that humility begins to be tested. And the next 10 years of Jacob's life are the hardest that we really read about in the Bible. Immediately after this time across the river, his daughter is raped. And then not long after his daughter is raped, Rachel dies. And then not long after Rachel dies, his son is killed, or so he thinks. Joseph is gone. His oldest son gets caught up in an incestuous relationship with his daughter, who was very ugly, and that broke his heart. Then his father died, his beloved father died on him. And then a great famine hit the land, and he became bankrupt. And then, of course, his son Benjamin here is lost to him in Egypt. All of these things happen in a short period of time. But what's wonderful in this account throughout this period of time is that Jacob never stops praising God and trusting in him. Even though it's difficult for him and he hates what's going on, he never stops praising or trusting in him because he now understands, being humbled, that life is a comedy for him. That this life that he's living, he believes in God, he trusts in him. He ever praised God and he ever trusted in him. And we all love the story, I love the story an awful lot, of the end of Jacob's life when he's in Egypt and he finds that Joseph is alive, of course, and he's there blessing Ephraim and Manasseh, his two grandsons. Do you remember that? And he's living in the lap of luxury down there. His son Joseph is the second most powerful man in all the world. Do you remember that? And he says to him as he's blessing his two sons,